When a ruthless HOA demolished a disabled veteran's wheelchair ramp, they thought they'd crushed him, trapping him in his own home and burying him in fines. At the heart of it was Margaret Hensley, a cold-hearted HOA president who wielded rules like a sledgehammer, targeting anyone too weak to fight back. But she didn't anticipate Walter Grayson's son, Ethan, unleashing the fury of the internet, the press, and the law. What unfolded next was a storm of justice that hit the HOA like a runaway train, leaving them scrambling and the community divided. Walter Grayson, 76, was no stranger to fighting battles he didn't choose. He'd faced them on foreign battlefields, where the air reeked of dust and danger, and later against bureaucrats who couldn't fathom his sacrifices. But now, in the quiet suburb of Maplewood Grove, he found himself in a war he never expected, against a group of power-hungry neighbors who cared more about curb appeal than human decency. His only offense? He needed a way to enter and exit his own home. 5 years ago, after losing his wife, Walter moved into a modest house in Maplewood Grove. It wasn't a retirement community, but its wide hallways and peaceful streets suited him. His son, Ethan, visited every weekend, helping with chores and keeping Walter's spirits high. But recently, Walter's strength had waned. A nasty fall on the front steps convinced Ethan that his father needed a wheelchair ramp, a simple, sturdy structure to ensure safe access. They built it in an afternoon, functional and unobtrusive. To the HOA, it was a declaration of war. 2 days later, a cease and desist letter arrived, its gold-embossed Maplewood Grove logo gleaming with arrogance. Ethan read it aloud, his voice tight with disbelief. "Dear Mr. Grayson, an unauthorized structure has been erected on your property without HOA approval. Per community guidelines, all modifications must preserve aesthetic harmony. Remove the structure within 7 days or face financial penalties." Walter snorted. "Aesthetic harmony? I thought they'd send a fruit basket." Ethan wasn't laughing. He called the HOA, expecting a misunderstanding. Instead, he met Margaret Hensley, whose icy tone cut like a blade. "All modifications require prior approval," she said, unmoved by Ethan's plea that the ramp was his father's only way out. If he needed accessibility, he should have bought an ADA-compliant home. Ethan's jaw clenched. "You're saying a 76-year-old veteran should have predicted his health decline years ago to satisfy your rules?" Margaret sighed, as if she were the victim. "Remove it, or fines begin." The call ended, and Ethan's blood boiled. Walter wanted to let it go. "It's not worth it," he muttered, pushing his dinner away. Ethan slammed his fist on the table. "No way, Dad. You're not a prisoner in your own home." They fought back, gathering Walter's VA records, a doctor's note declaring the ramp a medical necessity, and pages of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Emails to the HOA went unanswered. Then the fines began, $50 a day, then $100, then $250. Within weeks, Walter owed thousands, the HOA's news tightening. One morning, Ethan's phone rang at dawn. Walter's voice trembled. "They're here, son. They're tearing it down." Ethan sped to his father's house, heart pounding. He arrived to find 3 HOA workers in neon vests ripping the ramp apart with power tools. Margaret stood at the driveway's edge, arms crossed, watching like a dictator savoring a purge. Ethan charged forward. "This is private property." "You're trespassing." Margaret smirked. "The structure's illegal. It's being removed at the homeowner's expense." Ethan dialed 911, expecting justice. The police arrived, glanced at the HOA's paperwork, and shrugged. "Civil matter," one officer said. "Take it to court." The workers kept going, tossing planks into a truck. Walter watched from his doorway, his wheelchair a silent witness to his freedom being dismantled. When the last board was gone, Margaret turned to Ethan. "Have a nice day." Then she walked away. Walter stared at the space where his ramp had been, his voice barely a whisper. "Maybe we should give up." Ethan's heart shattered, but his resolve hardened. "No, Dad. They want a war? We'll give them one." The next blow came in a letter. Ethan tore it open, his stomach churning as he read, "Due to the removal of an unauthorized structure, your home lacks safe access, violating safety regulations. Failure to comply will result in further fines and potential foreclosure." They'd destroyed the ramp and now fined Walter for not having one. Ethan's hands shook. This wasn't incompetence, it was a calculated attack. That night, Ethan hired a disability rights attorney, determined to dismantle the HOA's tyranny. But he knew legal battles were slow, so he turned to the internet. He uploaded videos of the workers destroying the ramp, photos of the fines, and a scathing account of Margaret's cruelty. He hit post, expecting a few shares. Within hours, the story exploded. Veterans groups flooded the HOA's inbox with outrage. Disability activists called Maplewood Grove a cesspool of discrimination. News outlets picked up the story, and by morning, reporters were knocking on Margaret's door. She slammed it shut, but the cameras kept rolling. Social media erupted, with hashtag Justice for Walter trending nationwide. Neighbors who'd stayed silent began whispering, some in support, others defending the HOA's standards. The community split, arguments flaring in living rooms and online forums. The pressure mounted. The mayor, swamped with angry calls, condemned the HOA in a fiery press conference. "This is a disgrace. We're investigating Maplewood Grove's discriminatory practices." The city council called an emergency meeting. Meanwhile, Ethan's lawyer uncovered a bombshell. The HOA had a history of targeting elderly and disabled residents, and financial records showed thousands in maintenance fees funneled into board members' pockets. The lawyer handed the evidence to the city attorney, and the dominoes fell. Margaret was ousted as HOA president. 3 board members faced lawsuits for fraud and embezzlement. A citywide audit tore through the HOA's finances, exposing years of corruption. News stations broadcast the findings, branding Maplewood Grove a national disgrace. Margaret vanished, her reputation in tatters. The HOA crumbled under legal and public pressure. A week later, city workers rebuilt Walter's ramp, now protected by a legal injunction. The city passed the Brayson Rule, mandating HOA accommodations for disabled residents, with stiff penalties for violations. As Walter rolled down his new ramp, breathing fresh air for the first time in months, neighbors approached, some to apologize, others to shake his hand. "They thought they could break me," Walter said, a faint smile breaking through. "They forgot I don't quit." Ethan stood beside him, pride swelling. The HOA had underestimated Grayson, and they'd paid the price. The community remained divided, with some praising Walter's victory and others grumbling about special treatment. The debate raged online, fueling heated discussions about fairness, disability rights, and HOA power. What do you think? Was Walter's fight a triumph of justice, or did the HOA have a point in enforcing their rules? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear your take on this explosive clash. Share this story, subscribe, and let's keep the conversation going. Who's right, and who's wrong? You decide.